Meet Dave of Delusions of Grandeur, actor, producer, and director of films like Tales of the Forgotten. He has come to assemble a team of freaks, geeks, and even worse, film nerds, to discuss films ranging from mainstream to downright crazy. There is Tammy, car enthusiast, and Dave's fiance, Dustin, reptile expert and overall horror collector, Jake, environmentalist and fine art film critic, and finally Brandon, a therapist with a love of film that can only be seen as insanity. Together under Dave's leadership, they are Inside Movies Galore. Enjoy the show.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting film journey here on Inside Movies Galore. I am one of your hosts, but today we are going to be going on about something that was subjected to us this week by my good friend Brandon. So, Brandon, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you subjected us to this week?
So, of course, it's Dave and I share a birthday month, and this is my first in the stuff to kind of complement the Clerks / Jay and Silent Bob month of November that I'm going to be doing, where we finish up all of the Clerks and Jay and Silent Bob films. And today we're covering the 2000 to 2001 series Clerks, which is, of course, based off of the movie. With various directors, but of course, mainstays David Mandel, Scott Mosier, and Kevin Smith being majorly involved. Of course, this is a kind of a series taking place within the Clerks universe, though none of it would really be considered canon, just more of a kind of oddball take on it. So, let's go ahead and run down the group of people. I'm just going to go from what I see from left to right. So we'll start with you, Dave. Was this your first exposure to Clerks, the animated series?
Yes and no. I would say yes, because this is the first time I've actually sat down and watched it. No, because I've attempted to watch it and I have failed. So, that being said, now that I've forced myself to watch it, I want my time back. But that being said, there were some things that were mildly amusing, and I'll just leave it at that.
All right, so Brittany, who is kind of guesting on our show today, thank you for coming on with us.
Thank you for having me.
And so was this your first time watching Clerks, the animated series? What's your first impressions?
No, it is not my first time. I was one of the few people that watched it when it first aired. And my impressions were mixed. It's definitely a 2000s adult animated show. They kind of seem to have similar tones of a lot of flashbacks and callbacks throughout the shows. It's a mixed bag. It's okay. There's some great jokes, but at the same time, it's not even, in my opinion, as good as Clerks, the original. So
definitely that. I definitely agree on the not as good as the original. So, Jake, was this your first time watching Clerks, the animated series?
Is it safe? It was not. I think I've seen the whole thing maybe once before. I know we were talking about when we were getting ready to get going here. Uh, there was anticipation for this series when it came out, and I remember wanting to see it. I honestly cannot remember if I caught any of well, there only were a couple of original airings, but I honestly don't think I caught the original airings. But I feel like I saw at least one or two episodes a while.
Episodes. If you saw both episodes, there's only 2 episodes got aired.
Right. I don't remember when this became available on home release either, so I really don't. I don't know how
long after. I do remember it available pretty quick.
Okay. I feel like I saw it, but again, it's been a minute since I've seen the whole thing before, and I don't know at what point in the process I saw the whole thing versus episodes. My impression of it has always been that it is amusing, but nowhere near on the same level as the first movie. Honestly, it's nowhere near on the same level as any of the Clerks movies. I feel like the second one is arguably the weakest of the movies, and this one is definitely not on that level. As far as Kevin Smith's work overall, I still have yet to see Yoga Hosers or Kilroy Was Here or Cop Out. So I don't know if this is the worst of his stuff, but I would definitely not put it on par with Clerks or Dogma or Chasing Amy or any of those. I feel like Kevin Smith is someone, I was introduced to him through Dogma. I remember I had heard the name, and in college, I had friends who were Kevin Smith fans, and I went with them to see Dogma, and that was my first introduction. And well, we've covered a couple of them on this channel too, including Clerks. So I've had opportunities over the years to see a bunch of them. I believe Dane brought us Tusk, if I remember correctly. It's I feel like he's a really solid writer. He is very amusing as an actor insofar as his Silent Bob role, and I've seen him do some acting elseways, but usually it's a variation on Silent Bob. As a director, I do think he's a little weak. But even so, I feel like this one might have benefited a little bit with him being in the director chair. So I don't know. It is a really odd fit for a Disney-related production. It was technically Touchstone Television, I think. And I think it aired on ABC, which is a Disney channel. It's like, I just find that hilariously weird.
Well, I mean, the original was a Miramax release, wasn't it?
Well, yeah. But Miramax was not with Disney at the get-go. They were bought by Disney later.
Yeah, but by this point, they did own them.
Right. Yeah.
Hey, does that make Jan, Silent Bob Disney princesses?
Yes.
Yes, I think it does. But anyway, so yeah, it's interesting. It is interesting, even though rightly so, there is some a cloud right now around Alec Baldwin. It was fun seeing him cut loose as a complete villain, even in a vocal role. That's kind of fun. It's interesting. But I do think that a lot of the humor has not aged well, even by those early 2000 standards, if I were to go back and watch contemporary Family Guy or South Park, I'd probably feel like the humor on those has aged better.
Depends.
Yeah.
Early South Park humor has not aged that well.
Yeah.
Some of them did, some of them didn't. It depends on the episode.
This show does fit that mold of let's throw things at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And some of the jokes were duds on arrival, and some of them are duds now with the benefit of 20 years looking back. But some of them are, that whole "is it safe" thing is just hilarious to me.
Oh, yeah, it's one of my favorite jokes in the entire series. I don't know.
Of course, they start with that, so you know.
It only goes downhill from here.
Exactly. But you know, I'm glad to revisit it.
All right. Well, Tammy, was this your first time watching Clerks, the animated series?
Yes.
Actually, did you watch Clerks with us when we covered the original movie?
I don't remember.
I actually don't think that she was with us when we watched Clerks, so technically we could probably redo Clerks sometime in the future.
Don't let this turn you off of the original movie.
Especially seeing as we're going to be starting with in November, we're doing Clerks 2,
Yeah,
Clerks 3.
Clerks original was definitely better than this by far.
Well, Brandon, sorry, but if it wasn't for that it wasted my time while I was at work, I would have thought it was a complete waste of time.
Hey, everything is there. I wasn't very hot on Dave's choice last week. We all have,
Right.
we all have things that are there and go.
But yeah, I didn't really get into it at all. Like I said, it was something to do and to use up my time working third shift.
All right. Well, let's. So for me, I admit I never got to see it as it aired, but I really wanted to. I didn't get into Kevin Smith as much as everybody else did originally. My first exposure with Kevin Smith was Dogma, and then I kind of played back from there. So it was kind of cool. I got this on DVD and I ended up watching it, and it did hit with me in some levels, humor-wise, especially when I was watching it in the early 2000s. But humor sensibilities have changed over time. I also thought The Man Show was entertaining in the early 2000s. So, you know. But I find the whole situation interesting. Not just the show itself, but all the stuff behind it, all the politics. And it really does show how studio meddling, though you could look at almost every DCU movie and see how that is. But, you know, how studio meddling can really screw over a project. And they kind of shot for the stars thinking, well, we got ABC. And as I said, ABC at first bought it when they were fourth place behind the other two networks and another one. I can't remember what the other one was. And then they suddenly got catapulted to first place. And then after that, they got really hands-on and saying, no, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do this. So like 90% of the jokes that they wanted to tell, they couldn't tell. So it's just that the whole story itself behind Clerks to me is just as interesting as the show itself.
I saw this thing on IMDb that said that the studio suits didn't even know Jay and Silent Bob were drug dealers. And I'm like, how do you not know this?
Yeah, Disney bought the show without even knowing what the source material was. So they decided to change them into just kind of mischievous scamps. And
fireworks dealers.
And in truth, I saw some of the original sketches of Jay, and they kind of made him look more sinister. But I actually like the innocent, wide-eyed looking Jay from this. there's some jokes that they managed to sneak by in creative ways because the lawyers didn't know that they were what they were. So it's a mixed bag for me because I still enjoy it, but it is probably my least favorite of the Clerks franchise. And they must have spent most of their budget in guest voices because they had 1 billion of them, and it's some of the weird stuff from each episode, and we'll cover some of it as we go. Only 2 episodes aired, but then after some time, they did air all 6 on Comedy Central. And we'll go through it, and we'll go through this in order as we talk, and I will just hit it sort of like how our anime show is done, where I'll just explain what's going on in the episode and check what y'all's thoughts were in each, and then I'll tell you what order the episodes aired in as we reach them. So we'll start with episode 1, which did not air originally. It eventually aired on December 14th, 2002 on Comedy Central. So episode 1 is called Leonardo Returns, and Dante has an important decision to make. Billionaire Leonardo returns, and he decides that he is going to go in direct competition with the Quick Stop by building the Quicker Stop.
Now, I feel like this was done around the same time as Good Burger, because at the same time, Good Burger had Mandel Burger show up right across the street from them. You know.
So. Good Burger was 97, so that was a little bit earlier.
It's a fairly common plot thread that you see in cartoons where they just build up the competition.
Well, we see it in shows and films as well. Yeah. I mean, it's the whole Walmart situation that happened in the 80s, 90s, where people feared Walmart coming into town, destroying the mom and pop shops.
And we have the Jay and Silent Bob. Instead of selling weed, they're selling fireworks because they weren't allowed to sell weed on this.
Right.
Because they figured Clerks must be a kid's thing. No.
Yeah.
But it does have the joke at the beginning, which I'll admit, I wish it had aired first because that isn't safe joke really did land, in my opinion. It still lands to this day.
Did they honestly not know with Jay constantly saying snooch to the nooch?
No, they're not very bright lawyers. I mean, as far as like not knowledgeable of these types of things. Like when they called like somebody a mung, for instance, they did not know that slang back then, which they said, if they knew what the slang meant, they would never let us say it even once on the air. So yeah, it's funny. They did manage to get away with a few little things here and there. But I mean, the scene where they have Leonardo Tower and Jay is like, that looks like a bong. Then a dog walks by. That looks like a bong.
Right. And then they show the Quicker Stop and he says something like, that's the ugliest bong I've ever seen.
Yeah. So what did y'all think of episode 1? Any thoughts about the plot line? Leonardo, which I admit, he's a fun villain character.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I get a little kick out of the always Randall. He's always trying to make his coworker out to be gay, and I hate to say the word, but they say it on the show, and it is what it is. But
there's a lot of gay jokes in this, which haven't aged well. But but they were funny at the time. They probably shouldn't have been, but they were funny at the time.
Probably some of them funnier than others, but that's one of the things with Kevin Smith. Is that's always been a vein of humor he likes to hit. And one thing I'll say is that it rarely feels mean. So that's probably why it's not as bad as it could be. It rarely feels mean in his stuff. But it does feel lazy.
it's the 80s, 90s concept. I mean, when you wanted to attack somebody, you'd call them gay, or any other derogative word of that scenario. So
it was slang. It was
it was the slang of the time.
Yep.
And of course, both this one and Family Guy had to make that joke about the British version versus the American version.
You're
which I'll admit, what's that?
it's like, you're a fag. You're
Yeah.
a cigarette.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, South Park made that joke too. And
Yeah.
South Park, I feel did it the best way.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think they did it later though.
well, yeah, and I remember. Yeah, I mean, I remember the joke on Family Guy, and I thought that was a pretty fun joke too. But like I said, it's probably not one I would repeat on the air. But you know, it's like I said, this show is full of humor that has not aged well, that may have been funny at the time. And like I said, that's one of the things with Kevin Smith. It's like he is very intelligent. He is very smart, but his writing can be lazy, and he sometimes does go for that juvenile humor when he could have gone a notch higher. He just went a little lower, you know, and it's something you'll see in anything his name is attached to.
Well,
but I think it hit this show harder than most.
you mentioned Yoga Hosers, which I admit he goes really low on that one. But and then of course the Kilroy, which none of us, unless you got in on the crypto thing when it was released, none of us will ever see.
Yeah, that's
unless somebody who got one of them decides that, you know what, if I, for instance, if I had managed to get in on it, I would have copied it and just handed out copies to everybody I knew, because I find it like ludicrous. I think that whole concept was stupid, but it is what it is. Talk about dated stuff. But yeah, that's
Kevin Smith is very dated. He lives in very much nostalgic concept.
Yeah,
I mean, the only other show I know of that he's been part of was Comic Book Men on AMC, where he owns the comic book store, and it's literally real life, comic book industry, how things play out. But I mean, the show is mostly about going back on nostalgia.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and this was when he was just starting to really blow up. He still was at the time still, going in and talking to just everyday people at the time.
Well, I mean, Chasing Amy got him some attention, and then once Dogma came out, he became a household name at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But he's a good example.
I remember actually going and seeing Dogma in the theater myself, so it was a thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, I watched it with a college group. I remember at the time. But again, that's the thing is Kevin Smith was one of those cases of an indie filmmaker that managed to make it big. He worked on, he saved up the money, he sold his comic collection or something like that to manage to get the money to make Clerks, and the investment paid off.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't always, but it wasn't
even saving the money. It was literally just to buy the money for the camera to get Clerks made, because most of the cast are his friends in real life. So and it's just like, hey, I'm going to get these people that are around me to act in this film. And for an indie creator, that's what you do.
Yeah, I mean, everything in Clerks, if you think about the original Clerks, is the highlight of what many of us who have either worked in or have seen the micro-budget cinema scene have done. I am amongst those people, approaching friends for favors. Hey, will you act in this for me? I'm actually doing that now because I've actually been tapped to direct the 7th film in the long-running DV series, and I'm working on getting casting right now. So my begging muscles are getting used. Because I'm not going to make any money off of this. But that's written. So yeah, it's kind of fun to see that it can evolve into something big if you can hit the right crowd. And Kevin Smith has been creative about that. I mean, he's taken some of his films on the road, literally like old school, which is kind of cool.
Well, that's what he's doing with the re-release of Dogma. He's doing like a tour,
which is great. I mean,
yeah.
I think it's great. Dogma, I think, is a perfect story. This is a great month for it because we're covering Dogma at the end of the month, where he finally got the rights back from Weinstein, and I am happy for him.
I mean, since I the rest of you, most of you have been here for the Clerks one. I'll say, I mean, I found Clerks through having to do a cult film history course in my senior year in college. And that's how I watched Clerks, and that's how I got into Kevin Smith's movies. But I mean, for most of y'all, I figure, Dogma, probably your first introduction.
I could see Jake getting into Clerks first because you were in with the really snooty like film group people.
No, well, again, that was the group that introduced me to Dogma. They were already familiar with these movies. Actually, the first time I heard about him was actually my long-running, what I would consider my first long-running job. I worked off and on for a fish store for 10 years. And I had people who I worked with there who were huge fans of Clerks and Mallrats. And I had definitely heard about the movies. I just had not seen them before I saw Dogma. And then once I saw it, I was like, I need to see what this guy's on about.
All right, now I'm just curious about you working in a fish store.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Shoot. Yeah. You didn't know him back. Actually, you knew him somewhat. Well, actually, maybe you knew him back in those days.
Yeah, you probably actually knew me when I was still working for them because I
at the tail end, probably.
What's that?
At the tail end, I would expect.
Yeah, at the tail end. I worked there, I think, from 96 to 06.
Wow.
Yeah, because it was in Richmond, too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's why it was off and on. Obviously, I wasn't working there when I lived in the mountains.
Yeah, it's a long commute.
Yeah.
Fish will last.
Yeah.
Not well, but it'll last.
He literally packed all the fish in his car to throw them on the road. Jake literally packed all the fish in his car and he sold them door to door.
No, I wouldn't do that.
All right, well, back to the series. So we've got some mainstays and we've got some new ones. And I'm just going to talk about some of the characters, and then y'all can comment as you want for the characters.
Okay.
We've got, of course, Dante, who is the kind of put upon guy who, the line frequently is like, I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
He never does say that, does he? He almost.
I don't think he says that at all. He almost does, but they don't say the line. And
his only co-employee is lazy as fuck. So
that's the thing, is he's one of those people who wants everything to change, but he wants it to change around him instead of doing it himself. And then when he does get up the balls to do something, then it backfires on him and discourages him from ever doing it again. And part of what has that happen is his best friend Randall, who tends to screw things up. But Randall is a purposeful. He's not lazy thinking the world's not going to evolve, it's going to change around him. He's lazy because he knows he's lazy, and he's fine with things the way they are.
Yeah.
But what do y'all think of Dante and Randall as characters?
Well, they are reasonably true to what we're used to from the movies. They're a little toned down. Definitely Randall does some less television friendly stuff in the movies. My favorite scene is probably still the one where he's reading off the list of porn titles to the distributor, and this woman is there with her little girl, and it's like he doesn't do anything quite like that here. But I will say, the phrase comes to mind, with friends like these.
Yeah.
Well, in my mind, they're both a couple of slackers who will never amount to anything, but
Yeah.
at least Dante is an honest one, and he's
Yeah.
an honest slacker with responsibility, unfortunately. And he always ends up being the one that cleans up the shit on aisle 5. So,
Because he has the responsibility.
well, not just the responsibility, he's the only one who can clean the shit up, because it's not going to happen with any of his employees that work with him.
We'll get to
more
that.
responsible of the two, but
There is that one episode I know we'll get to it where we find out what happens when Randall opens.
yeah. Well, Randall runs the video store next door to it, which is another thing that's kind of gone the way of the dodo. Most kids are probably like, video store. What's that? And of course, Dante is more in charge of the Quick Stop itself, the convenience store. Then there's Jay and Silent Bob. Now they're the other mainstay from the original.
What's that?
I thought we were still talking about Dante and not Randall.
Oh, go ahead. If you had something to say on them, yeah, go for it.
Dante was like the only one I actually somewhat liked.
Yeah.
Randall was annoying.
Mhm.
Well, he is the straight man. Dante is the straight man to the rest.
But when if you have who needs enemies if you have friends like Randall?
Yeah.
Wait till you watch Clerks too.
Randall, when I first saw Clerks, I thought Randall was the funniest thing ever. And I feel like it's like diminishing returns. I feel like almost every time I see him, but again, in the first movie, that holds up pretty well. Randall in this series is much more annoying, and Randall in this second movie is annoying as shit. The third movie, he got some of it back, but
see, I don't know if I don't remember any of the movies, so I don't think if I did see any, it would have probably only been the first one, which I don't remember. But I don't know. You almost feel bad for Dante because he just seems like he gets the short end of the straw no matter what he does.
One of the big reasons why Clerks is such a cult favorite with people in the workforce is that I think it's safe to say most of us can relate to Dante, and most of us kind of wish we could be Randall if only for a
Most of us who have worked in the workforce have had customers like they have.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I swear I've worked in the grocery stores. I swear I've had the egg guy in from Clerks movie.
Yeah.
I do like that they got the guy that like in the cartoons like, can you vulcanize my tires while I
Right. That's like I always remember in the movie that no ice. You mean I gotta drink this coffee hot? It's like, I love iced coffee, but I still think it's kind of funny that someone
Well, I mean, back in the day, that was unheard of, iced coffee.
Yeah, that is. And
very true back in those days.
That one girl, how much is this anyway? Oh my God, I've dealt with that customer.
What's weird is that when you look at those times, come to think of it, that's a time when Starbucks wasn't on every corner.
Yeah.
It's barely when Starbucks was starting. So I mean, it's essentially because it was 94 was the original movie.
By the time the animated series came out, though, Starbucks was on every corner.
So the comedic foils of them are Jay and Silent Bob. They are the scamps in this, and technically they are the scamps, just a little bit harder edged in the movie, because I mean, in a movie where it's a lot of cursing, a lot of adult stuff back and forth, they're still the playful scamps, really, if you look at it at the base. And I liked what they said is that if you've ever met Jason Mewes, the wide-eyed innocent, it actually works. And A lot of how Jay is done is there is a wide-eyed innocence about him, even though he doesn't act innocent at all.
Right.
So I do love that look that they did.
Jay and Silent Bob are like, to me, they are neighborhood groupies. They hang around their favorite spot, and they cause mischief and mayhem just because they can. And to me, it's comical to have them around because they're the outside atmosphere, and so you get that kind of crud that coming into the quickie stop because of that. So,
And
But
all
they're-
four are played by their original actors. I mean,
They're also relatively harmless. Like, people might debate that. Like in this one, straight up, when they're confronted about selling fireworks, they talk about, oh yeah, you might lose a limb or whatever, just kind of play off as a joke. Of course they deal weed in the movies, but they could be worse. And they actually show moments of actually, you don't get it as much in this, but in the movies, Silent Bob is often the voice of wisdom. He doesn't speak often, but when he does, it usually means something.
no ticket.
Yeah, well, and that was one of the they used him for a fun movie reference, but like he gives a full-on impassioned speech in Chasing Amy.
Oh yeah,
Like,
well,
even
most
in-
people know that, and
Yeah.
he makes fun of him for it in the Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back, where it's like you could usually get this Chasing Amy stuff, but
Well, in this one, at one point, Jay makes a comment about, like, right after Silent Bob speaks, Jay says something about he can't say anything, or like acting like he doesn't think he can talk, like even though he just talked.
yeah.
And then I think one of them, wasn't it Randall, who at one point asks, why do they call him Silent Bob?
Yeah. He asked that. He asked that when they go into court.
Yeah.
And basically try to get him to talk on the stand.
that whole court thing, that's the part that had me somewhat giggling.
But we'll get to that in a bit.
Right.
We'll get through these characters, and once we get through the characters, it's going to move quicker.
Right.
Of course, we also introduced Leonardo, played by Alec Baldwin, which, whatever your thoughts on Alec Baldwin, he is actually a pretty decent character actor and does some pretty fun voices. And he does a great villain in this series, a very cartoony villain, but that's the point.
Supposedly they wanted or almost had a reprise of their Dogma co-star Alan Rickman in the role, and he didn't want the character to look like Hans Gruber, but then when Baldwin took over, they ended up making the character look more Gruberish.
But of course, he is flanked by Mr. Plug, who is played by Dan Etheridge, which does an excellent job of doing a voice that you wouldn't expect coming from the character.
Right.
Well, I do see on the Wikipedia here, they noted that Alan Rickman's version of Leonardo was supposed to sound more like Ross Perot. So
that would have been interesting.
Yeah, that definitely would have been an interesting voice considering the character.
Can I speak now? Can I speak now? Can I speak now?
Yeah, that would have been very interesting and very different.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is kind of funny though that they ended up doing it the way they did.
I do kind of feel Leonardo basically kind of in Alex's repertoire built into his portrayal in the what was the NBC show that he was on?
30 Rock?
30 Rock, yeah.
30 Rock was more straight ahead. He was just like a a businessman who wasn't really plugged into the people around him. He was very aloof
And you watch the later episodes of this, and you don't see that with Leonardo.
You do. But
and let's not forget his best role as Boss Baby.
Yeah,
no, let's do forget that. Let's do forget that.
I love that it got an Oscar now.
Oh,
it won an Oscar, Brandon. It won an Oscar.
No, it didn't. I don't think it won.
No, it was just nominated, but it was
some bullshit though. With some of the things that could have been up, it was bullshit that got up. But anyway, that's neither here nor there.
But yes, your thoughts on Leonardo. Of course, going back to the old days where things like he traded for the deadly polio virus.
It's interesting how they portray Canada as this primitive wilderness.
To be fair, a lot of people don't realize Canada is not that old as its own independent country.
Oh yeah. But just like, again, the way they did it, and again, that was some jokes that would be a little hard to pull off today, but it is amusing to see Canada, of all places, done that way. Yeah. And then, like, he's trying to position himself as, like, this great importer of Canadian goods. Like, that's some sort of weird thing. It's like,
well, I mean, when you think of exclusive stuff, you think of we don't even import Canadian syrup here in the United States. It mostly comes from Vermont, from us. And so, we get some, but I mean, most maple syrup we get is Vermont or is freaking corn syrup. So it's amusing with the Canada merchandise. And I'm like, well, what would they have? It's like syrup, lumberjack merchandise, Mountie merchandise, maple leaves.
This is not something they should be proud of, but Canada is one of the world's top distributors of peat.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing there.
Well, I mean, Canada's got a lot of wood.
Well, yeah.
Trees and rocks.
Yeah, so
exactly.
lumber is huge, yeah. But yeah,
and oil, lots of oil.
And lots of oil, yes.
And so this
you just don't think of a theme restaurant or theme place based off Canada.
Actually, I think I have seen a couple, but
you have.
I like that they've named it north of the border, which
right.
It's a spoof on south of the border.
I've heard of south of the border, yet never ever been there. Even though
big tourist trap. Great place to buy fireworks, but it was it doesn't exist anymore. They got rid of the south of the border scenario, and it's kind of like just a regular shopping center now. For those who don't know, you go from North Carolina into South Carolina. Right on the border was this town that was themed as the concept of Mexico, but in South Carolina.
Yeah. Wasn't it supposed to be a part of the pilgrimage to Myrtle Beach, typically for most people?
Yeah, and they had this huge sort of scenario, including some giant sombrero, sort of Eiffel Tower looking thing, and you'd go there essentially to get fireworks or play video games or do stuff that you couldn't buy in North Carolina. So it was dumb. But it was amusing at the same time.
So speaking of fireworks, though, we mentioned that this kicks off with that whole "is it safe" joke, but we didn't really talk about how that plays out, because they have the introduction to Jay and Silent Bob's side hustle, where this guy finally gets out of the hospital, and he's been shell-shocked with trauma over this whole "is it safe" thing, and the doctor assures him, yes, it is safe. And then right when he's ready to step out into the world, he gets blown up by a firecracker. It's
Yeah, apparently that was the part that the execs focused on for all of the ads, which is funny because it's about an episode that never aired.
Right. The episode also sets up a running gag that may or may not be the funniest, but
What, the climbing gag?
The climbing gag, yeah.
Well, I mean, being a watcher and having seen it when it aired, you go from and the way they aired it was the 4th episode to the 2nd episode.
Yeah.
And when you tune into the 2nd episode airing live, and you're like, I don't remember any of this, but why are you doing a clip show of stuff that never happened in a show that just started?
Well, we'll get to that in a bit. But yeah. And they were making fun of the whole Batman thing where they were doing that exact thing. It's, where it's like, it looks like they're climbing up because of the angle of the camera.
Right.
Yeah, except no
Why are
one
we
came
doing
out
this?
and said hello.
So, Tammy, did you have any thoughts about Leonardo, the villain?
He's, I don't know. It's just, he's strange.
For some reason, he grew on me the second time we saw him because he ended up in Dante's pile of dirty underwear.
Mhm.
And he was
in the reunion episode.
Like, hold on. Can I silence you about this? Can we never speak about this again?
The Bond villain that had the little bowler hat, that was Oddjob, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
that was
Yeah.
From Goldfinger.
I feel like Plug was modeled on Oddjob, but like maybe if they gave him the Venom drug or something. he was a robot, but still the look was kind of like Oddjob crossed with Bane. It's like,
Yeah. Well, I mean, Odd Job is, when you think of Bond henchmen, Odd Job
Right.
is like top of the list. So
yeah.
Well, we've gotten to essentially in this episode.
No, actually, Blofeld's cat is top of the list.
We get through this episode, and essentially they show his evil plan and convince one dude that's passing through after going through the 97 billion parts of the plan. And it eventually resolves with the quicker stop being blown up by Jane and Silent Bob.
Mm-hmm.
It's just an odd, quick resolve.
Right.
And then it all just gets right back to where it was again.
Well, actually, yeah, it's like Dante and Randall broke in and found Jay and Silent Bob just chilling in his office, having a good old time. Like, they were like, how'd you even get in here? And it was just, yeah.
Now, this also kicks off one of 3 of their public service announcement things they were going to do at the end of every episode, but then got tired of the gag and stopped.
Ah.
And I can't remember. I know there's one about campfire stories. That was the last one.
Mm-hmm.
There was the one about rainy day. That was the second one.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't remember what the first one was.
Wasn't the first one the campfire one?
No.
I honestly don't remember it myself.
Because the third one was the really brief one where basically Charles Barkley came up and started talking, and Jay and
Charles Barkley appears in each one of those.
Right, but no, he actually got a couple of lines in this time.
They started him off, yeah.
They ran him off, and then they just left, and it was like that was the end of it. The first 2, they told him to leave, and then they did their bit. But yeah, I can't remember.
But yeah, Charles Barkley actually being portrayed by Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
They're a throwaway joke.
Yeah.
Which he had to be a good sport to do that, I'm sure.
Well, Charles Barkley has, from what I've heard, Charles Barkley's enjoys a good joke. He's been in a lot of films,
right?
That jokey films. I think he's been in one of the Naked Gun films, playing himself. So,
yeah. I mean, they did some sports jokes in throughout this, which were kind of fun. The only thing I remember is the second episode when they're in there and how they got away with this. Where I was like, "Yeah, we're bored," and then she's like, "Well, let's make a film. Take off your shirt."
Yeah.
Which that one was kind of creepy, and I was like, "Here, I'll show you a magic trick," and sets the coin down, takes the glass to put it on top of it, then says, "I sell your soul to the devil, Satan," and then disappears.
Well, I mean, it's a joke to spoof the old GI Joe ad at the end of every episode.
Because they had to do it in the 80s. That was a part
I mean, they carried it on throughout the 90s, because I remember watching original Sailor Moon release, and you'd always have Sailor Moon says at the end, where you had to teach the kids a lesson.
I mean, a lot of people think that the urge to like talk about things going too far and try to urge people to stay away from controversy started in the current times is no. The 80s and the 90s was big on censorship, and you have to include educational stuff for kids. Now, also, though, they were kind of the people that were in charge were using cartoons to sell toys to children, too. So, it's kind of a mixed bag there.
Yeah, but a lot of the shows are still hold up. I mean, if you go back and watch, some of them may be dated, but they still hold up compared to some of the stuff that we get nowadays.
Well, I did just show off on a pickup video where I picked up the Captain Planet series.
Yeah.
Kind of held up a little bit. The later episodes, but some of the early episodes of Captain Planet did hold up.
So, we will, I guess we'll move on from this to the second episode now that we've gone through all the main characters, because those are the four main characters really throughout the series. You got others that come and go, but that's really there. The second one was a clips show, and as was Brittany said, that was the second. So technically, it aired as the second episode. But
it was a locked room clip show. You have to note it's also the locked room because it plays on the concept of the locked room clip show. When shows are like, we've run out of ideas, we need to fill an episode. Let's get them locked in a room and they'll flash back.
And they were showing flashbacks to an episode that never aired.
But they did. What was it? 3 or 4 episodes. I mean, flashbacks that were all the same episode before Dante keeps saying that was the same thing. That was the same thing. And then they start, quote unquote, flashing back to stuff that never aired on any episode.
Or stuff that just happened in the same episode.
Right. Yeah.
Because they flash back to them being in the cooler with them being in the cooler.
Yeah. And this is the first appearance of Idiot Dante in the thing where he's in the diaper swinging the cat. Which he appears, I think, at least one more time when he's in a American flag diaper.
And this is also one of a couple episodes where we have celebrity voices badly impersonated by Gilbert Gottfried.
That was the Patrick Swayze. Yeah, that's number 3.
No, he also played Jerry Seinfeld in this one.
Oh, was he?
Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
Yeah, the third episode was kind of creative about some of the stuff and what they had to do, but we'll get to that in a bit.
They also somewhat weirdly, Gwyneth Paltrow is played by herself.
Well, I mean, I enjoyed constantly hearing Bryan Cranston. This was right as Malcolm in the Middle started at the same time, so Bryan Cranston's name was still just some small comedian who appeared on Seinfeld as a regular occurring character once.
Yeah, I do like Gilbert Gottfried, though. I could see them working with him very well because he gets Kevin Smith's humor. So,
or
I say got. I know. Rest in peace.
Yeah.
But what did y'all think of this? To me, it was a pretty throwaway episode. It has a funny value to me, but only in its concept of being, we're going to do a clip episode as the second episode in the series. But
I think it's more of an insider joke gag episode. I really do. I don't feel it didn't really work for me when I originally watched it when it aired. I was like, eh. But I mean, at the same time, it's very much an insider joke, and I think nowadays that one hits a bit better because people understand that concept. But back in the day, it was less. It's like, oh yeah, shows do this kind of regularly. It's kind of just that awkward, huh?
I do like the Randall getting kicked off of the Real World. That was funny.
Yes.
And Brandon, I'm a little surprised you didn't love the Stephen King reference at the end.
The Stand By Me joke. With Jay as the narrator.
Right. that was kind of interesting. But this one also brings in producer and longtime compatriot Scott Mosier in a small role. And a couple
I also saw Harry Weinstein as an exec producer on some of them. Unfortunately, they have
this was
that on it.
Well, at this time, I think Smith still had a pretty good relationship with the Weinsteins. It wasn't until later that he really pulled away. What's that?
As an artist, I'll note Steven Silver was the character designer on this.
Mm-hmm.
Most people know him from Kim Possible and Danny Phantom.
That's actually kind of funny is when he was actually doing the commentary on it.
Yeah.
He said, "Yeah, I'm working on this little thing right now called Kim Possible. I don't know if it's going to be any good."
Which was one of Disney's better hits at the time, and then he moved on to Nickelodeon to do Danny Phantom, which was a hit for Nickelodeon.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah.
You've also got this episode. I think was the first one. The narrator of the series is Kevin Michael Richardson. He has a couple of roles here and there as well. He plays Morpheus in a later episode. He's done a couple others. But this one also has a couple of other well-known voice actors. Kath Soucie's in here, Tara Strong. You get
Tara Strong is the giggling girls.
Yeah, she's in a few episodes in that role.
And some friends, Walt Flanagan and Brian Johnson, who are from, if you know Comic Book Men, you know them as Kevin Smith's good friends. They were, of course, in Clerks as well.
So one of them reprising Steve Dave and the other one from Clerks themselves.
Right. Like, I think Scott Mosier's character here, Willem Black, I think is the character he played in the original Clerks. If it's not the same, it's almost the same.
Probably.
I mean, if it was from the original Clerks, they managed to get pretty much everybody back. But, of course, they're friends of Kevin Smith, so it makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. There were a couple who weren't, but quite a few of them, yeah.
Was that
I can't imagine the old woman in Clerks was a friend of Kevin.
What's that?
Was that the clip show where they were basically saying "screw you" to all of the famous actors that were stopping by the store?
Oh yeah, that's the part where Gwyneth shows up as herself and Gottfried shows up as Jerry Seinfeld, and that was.
And of course, the Matt Damon cameo thing there, which they're like, "Yeah, that's right, take that, Matt Damon."
I'm actually moderately surprised and disappointed they didn't actually get Damon to do something on the show.
I think Damon was trying to distance himself from Dogma so he could get different roles.
He was. I remember reading an article. I think this was a couple years before Born Identity, right?
They mention it at the very beginning as like pre-Reindeer Game.
Yeah,
that little blurb at the very beginning.
Well, I was going to say, I know I read an article around this time where they talked about Damon was very actively pursuing an alternating career. Like he would do something mainstream and then do something artsy, and then he would do something like. And one of the reasons he took the Born Identity was because it was so different from what he had been doing. Yeah. So, it wouldn't surprise me if maybe he had plans to, okay, you guys do your thing for a season and then I'll come on,
Matt Damon's best role was always going to be Eurotrip.
And then I did read, and Brandon, you might have seen this in the commentary, I did read that apparently Ben Affleck was going to play the King of Canada, and they just didn't run the show long enough for that to happen.
Well, from what I've heard, they actually had Damon and they actually had a lot of them on board to come on.
Right.
They just didn't have the show long enough.
Right. I think with Rickman, I didn't read why he stepped away from Leonardo.
He didn't want to reprise because Leonardo was designed after a Hans Gruber.
Right.
And he didn't want to reprise Hans Gruber. He was kind of tired of Hans Gruber.
What I had read was that I was kind of under the impression that they were willing to work with him, but I guess, yeah, maybe they weren't giving enough concessions or whatever. Yeah.
Anything else on this clip episode? Dave, Tammy, any thoughts from y'all on that you wanted to put forward before we moved on?
This would be the second episode, right?
Second episode, yes. The clip episode is second.
I was entertained. There's nothing that really pops out in this particular episode.
All right. Anything else on that? And then we will move on to number.
I do feel episode 2 is probably the weakest out of the 6.
I like the concept of it, and they had good points.
Clip show episodes usually are the weakest, though. That's probably part of the point of the show.
It was kind of forgettable for me. So
yeah.
But I think that's the point of it, though. I think that the whole joke of it works on paper, but in practice, it's not as funny as it probably seemed. and probably everybody else was kind of like, wow, there's a clip show that episode, but none of the clips come from any of the previous episodes.
Well, I mean, they also, and they kind of did this in episode 1 when they did the rope gag. They ignored the rule of 3s, which any good comedic writer knows. A joke's only funny when it's told 3 times. If it goes into a 4th time, it loses its humor. And they went too long with that stupid rope gag in the first episode. And rewatching it really gets tiring. By the time you're in the second episode, you're still getting that damn gag.
Yeah. Well, let's then move on to episode 3, which is this one is interesting. And I thought I'd do some background on this real quick. Leonardo is caught in the grip of an outbreak of Randall's imagination, and Patrick Swayze either does or doesn't work in the new pet store. So this one is basically they go to a pet store and see this monkey. Leonardo gets bitten by the monkey. Randall has the whole outbreak issue. Leonardo ends up getting a bad burrito because he'll never take it in.
Sitting outside most of the day that Randall hasn't picked up.
Yeah. So he ends up pulling off this whole pandemic thing for the episode. Just a couple brief things of note, and then I'll let y'all go at it with it. Patrick Swayze did not like the idea of being in it, and threatened to sue if his model character looked anything like him. And would not voice him because, again, that would indicate that his make it look like his career was on the rocks, which it kind of was at the time. And they could not use Dustin Hoffman's face, which is one of the reasons why they had to. So they ended up making him look like Al Pacino instead.
And reference Al Pacino instead. Is there an Al Pacino?
Because Dustin Hoffman apparently had gone on record of suing anybody who used his face in anything. So the ABC execs would not allow it, which really sucked because they were trying to do a bunch of outbreak stuff. And who was it that you referenced there? Dustin Hoffman. But that's the whole of what I've got there. What are the rest of y'all's thoughts on? Oh, and James Wood guest stars as one of the general,
Major Baklava.
and of course Gilbert Gottfried as Patrick Swayze is hilarious. But
Right.
yes, what are y'all's thoughts on episode 3?
We also have a guest of Al Franken as Mayor McCheese. And yeah.
I did enjoy the joke with the mayor, and then the chief of police as well was going as Big Mac.
Yeah.
Those won't work today because people don't understand those characters. But back in the 90s, we all knew the characters roughly because of McDonald's. Played the hell out of them, and my favorite part of that is that no one can stop the grimace.
Yes.
Yeah.
No one can.
Unfortunately, McDonald's paid out the ass to if I remember correctly, it was H.P. Huff and Stuff or whatever. That sued them for basically raping the characters that they.
Oh yeah. I mean, if you look on YouTube, there's a couple videos where people just flat out said they're not only ripping them off, they had some of the sets from Puff and Stuff that were brought in those old commercials from the 70s to early 80s. Of McDonald's McPlayland or whatever they call it. Well, I mean, it was called McPlayland in the 90s, but I mean, it was called McDonald's Land, I guess, in the 80s.
And apparently, they actually got McDonald's approval for the jokes. Apparently, they had to explain the grimace joke to them. But once they were able to explain it, like, then they were like, oh yeah, use that.
Well, Grimace. I had a friend who had nightmares about Grimace. I didn't have that kind of fear. I know a lot of people did though.
I mean, the original joke was supposed to be that the mayor was going to keep showing up in a different costume. He was always going to be going to a costume party and couldn't get it. But of course, we didn't get to see him again.
That's too bad. That's too bad. Oh well. I will admit that I was never an enormous Patrick Swayze fan. To the point where when he shows up in Donnie Darko, which came out in 2006, I think, there is one part where Jake Gyllenhaal stands up in front of an audience and tells him to his face, "I think you are the Antichrist." And I just thought it was hilarious because I was such a non-fan of Patrick Swayze. So if I had seen this when it aired, I probably would have thought it was just the funniest thing ever. Now it's like, that is a really poor imitation of Swayze, but I could see why if he didn't want to be involved at all.
That was on purpose.
Yeah. and I did not catch Gilbert Gottfried right away as Jerry Seinfeld, but as soon as Swayze started talking, I was like, oh, that's Gilbert Gottfried again.
Well, that's because Gottfried probably would have an interaction with Seinfeld afterwards. Right. So,
but it's
I was amused, even though I think that Gilbert Gottfried's voice is annoying as fuck.
Right.
I was pretty much amused with him voicing Swayze.
Right.
I mean, Gottfried made his life off of his voice being annoying.
Right.
Well, it's my favorite Patrick Swayze thing is the Patrick Swayze Christmas, one of the best Christmas carols ever.
It's also interesting. Well, this is probably the first episode where we really get a feeling for the idea that for all his grandiose, megalomaniacal world domination plans, Leonardo is actually not that bright and pretty easily taken out of commission, given that he took those burritos from Randall.
Of course, Randall basically was told to put away a box of burritos that came in the morning. Never took them in until late that night.
Yeah, and it was apparently a very hot day too.
Actually, no, it was Dante
He
that
even
took in the
grew a
burritos.
Yeah. Yeah, they were. And wasn't it like they reeked? And I think Leonardo.
They were moving. They had them moving out. One escaped the box. And
We
moved
didn't
away.
see that. We didn't see that, but we could tell that they reeked. And when Leonardo said something about it, Randall said something about that's how you know they're good or something.
You didn't see
gourmet
the
or
one that
something.
crawled out of the
Yeah.
box?
No, I did. They didn't.
Okay, yeah. They didn't see the one. Yeah.
But yeah,
Well, Randall did sell the whole box.
he did for $100.
Did make a
That's,
profit.
yeah.
Uh,
And it was like, and it was even something about like, do you need or is there any change? And Randall's like, nope, or something.
actually,
Well, I love the joke that he sold it because it's like, oh, well, these are the exquisite, exclusive.
Yeah.
actually, I am surprised they were able to get away with what they did with Jay and Silent Bob in this, because not only are they smoking, they're teaching the monkey to smoke.
Yeah.
They get to a point where they're in that like plague tent, and they punch a hole in the plague tent to do like hits of the plague.
Actually, that was pretty funny because it's like Jay takes a hit and he's talking with that helium voice, and then Silent Bob takes a hit and just stands there. And he's like, you're supposed to talk.
Didn't he do an impression of E.T. Phone Home or some shit?
I think he did, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, James Woods, which he is an odd fella, but he has done some voice work and he seems really game for really crazy stuff. Like he appeared a few times on Family Guy, and they even named the high school after him. And this time, he plays a slightly more serious role than he does on that show, but he's kind of the straight man in this episode, but it's pretty fun.
He's very much an actor that loves to make fun of himself, let alone others.
Right.
So, yeah, because the Family Guy, he was himself, but he let them do some seriously stupid jokes with him.
Ooh, piece of candy. Ooh,
that is still one of the best Family Guy jokes. Still one of the best.
Actually, most of the good Family Guy jokes are within the first 3 seasons.
Exactly. Well, I mean, this time period, it's in Family Guy. It's only went before they got canceled. Once they came back, it started to be just decline from that point.
Yeah. It was all right for a couple seasons, but it was nothing. Those first 3 were a whole different thing. Yeah.
Any other comments on this episode?
Not really. It's a fun nod to, they have a pet shop and it all of a sudden just disappears in the middle of the night.
This one is one where they played a joke that, again, your mileage will vary, but they played a joke about political correctness and about how white his movies often are, where they introduced Lando. And you had Mario Joyner playing Lando. And he always gets cut off. Every time he starts to speak, he always gets cut off. And it's like, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's true. I mean, Kevin Smith has a lot of white actors in his films.
There was some diversity in Dogma. But,
I mean, you had Chris Rock in Dogma. That's about it.
And Salma Hayek too, and it offers a little.
Yeah. I always forget that she just didn't play. Well, she played a little bit of that stereotype, but she was the muse in that film. So
right. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I guess we will move forward. Yeah, the fan thing was like what we imagined that the fans would say. We would love to if people had written in about the show.
Yeah.
So let's talk about episode 4, or what was actually the first episode to air.
Right.
Which essentially our episode of.
We've got a very, very long title.
A dissertation on the American justice system by people who have never been inside a courtroom, let alone know anything about the law, but have seen way too many legal thrillers. Which basically, Jay slips on a soda, and thanks to Randall egging him on, sues for $10 million. Not just the Quick Stop, but also Dante personally. And Randall ends up defending Dante in the Quick Stop.
Which
with presiding judge Judge Reinhold.
Which I love Judge Reinhold. I don't know why, but he's one of my favorite actors, and I think it was just, and of course, guest starring Michael Buffer as well.
I wonder how many times they've done that joke, though. The honorable
Judge Reinhold has done that a couple times.
He did that in Arrested Development. He played a couple of episodes where he played himself as someone who somehow got roped into being a judge. I feel like he's done that a couple of times, but.
And this was my favorite episode, to be fair.
It had the most memorable joke of the series.
He actually does play Judge Reinhold, so he plays himself, and he does have the dream of him and Eddie Murphy doing things,
which is ironic. It's so ironic now that we have Beverly Hills Cop 4.
Of course, Axel Foley, his co-star in those dreams, is played by Phil Lamar, who another prolific voice actor. A guy did Hermes and a whole bunch of other characters. And we had George Lucas showed up being played by Paul Dini, the co-creator of the Batman animated series. So that's kind of an interesting...
It's not enough little like this, because this is sort of how George Lucas talks.
Yeah. But yeah, this one's kind of fun. Now they say that the man who represents himself has a fool for a client, but Dante would have done much better had he done it instead of Randall.
But it's Randall. You have to have the most incompetent person be the lawyer in this joke.
Right.
So, I mean, it's amusing. I mean, they get in this situation because Randall basically takes over the Quick Stop for about 5 minutes.
Yes.
If not less than that. Creates the spill and then immediately gives the job back to Dante because he can't handle it. And then immediately the slip happens.
Actually, I don't even think it was 5 minutes. I think it was at 8 o'clock that he called.
It was a 1 minute for his turn, but by the time Dante gets there, you got to give him like 5 minutes to do it.
Right. So, but he called in a panic less than a minute after the store opened.
Yes. Well, I mean, he had somebody there being hostile. It's like. Yeah. So I mean, you hear that kind of stuff, and then you add into the fact that you have Randall literally go up to the lawyer, threatening the lawyer to sue, basically, because the lawyer's like, "Nah, I'm good." He's like, "You're just shit."
Like, that's actually a running gag for this episode in particular, where Randall just keeps doubling down on it over and over again. It kind of reminds me of also on Penny Pony, which we talked about in this, where Ichigo does the same thing, is where she will they're ready to just let it go, and then they're like, no, keeps it going.
Yeah. I don't think y'all enjoyed that when Blaine tried it.
No. But like I said, it has the best joke, which is, who is driving? Barry's driving.
I actually, because they had marketed it to a Korean animation studio, this was kind of that in joke that apparently there were sometimes when they were so cheaply animated, it would come back and the wrong people were saying the wrong lines and things like that. They really didn't care.
It's traditional. I mean, in the 90s to 2000s, when I was learning animation, that was the go-to. You had to go to Korea for animation studio to do the in-between work, and there would be a lot of mistakes. Back in the 80s, you'd see moments. I do remember a lot of times in the Ninja Turtles animated series on CBS back in the day, the first one, you'd have colored mistakes all the time. You'd have because it's the turtles look the same except for their colors
And their weapons.
and their weapons, but you'd constantly have like
Right.
Michelangelo would be voicing, but you'd have Raphael being the character on the screen.
Right. Yeah.
All right. But yeah, actually, there are a couple of parts of that I did enjoy. Like, I liked how they got inside the Transformer. The Transformer transforms it is a bloody mess.
And there's no better way to end it because there's no way getting out of that case.
Yeah. They were screwed. Yeah. And then they had that thing where you saw each of their dreams before they went in for the final day. And what was it that Randall did something like somehow his test of whether it was a dream or not was when Dante actually hit him back with his usual sarcastic remark rather than just being an idiot. And he's like, oh, okay. Yeah, this is not a dream. Because, some friend, if in his dreams, Dante is always a drooling idiot.
All right. I can also say the joke you were saying about this title being long, Jacob, is a running gag that each episode progressing until the 6th episode had a longer title. Each episode as we go would have a longer title. So the next episode has an even longer title.
Oh, okay. Good times.
Which we shall go to now, unless anybody else has anything else to say about this episode.
No.
I guess
All right.
this was the only one that I felt, I don't know, was more amusing, I guess. Because I guess of everybody that was involved in this one, all the different voices.
Well, if you had been watching this series when it aired, and this was the first episode that you had watched, would it have interested you in trying to watch further?
I can tell you as someone who did, and this did make me want to watch the next episode. But I mean, at the same time, you could tell this was ABC saying this is the best episode we have going forward. Let's air it and see if it gives us a shot.
I don't know if I would have wanted to watch more or not because I don't think if it wasn't for this, I probably wouldn't have watched it to begin with. So
yeah. Well, I guess we'll move on to number 5. Dante and Randall and Jay and Silent Bob and a bunch of new characters and Lando take part in a whole bunch of movie parodies, including but not exclusive to The Bad News Bears, The Last Starfighter, Indiana Jones, The Temple of Doom, plus a high school reunion.
And The Matrix. We have to state The Matrix in this.
Well, that's the next episode.
Oh, that's the next episode?
That's the last episode. Yeah. So essentially, Dante and Randall attend a high school reunion where we find that Randall has a tendency to make every woman he dates gay, and he gets lost in the Last Starfighter type machine, where he then is enslaved in the Temple of Doom cult, whereas Dante manages a Little League team. Which I think they had to change to Junior Little League because the Little League threatened to sue them. I
do like how he turns women gay because it's just the stupidest thing, but it's very much a 90s kids thing where it's like, oh, I'm gonna play this video game and just keep playing and ignore the people around me.
This one actually was one of my favorite episodes in this. It was fairly well on for most of it. I mean, and of course, the whole thing, and Randall was getting his for a lot of this episode, which is maybe why I liked it so much, because he was basically whisked away to be a slave working to build pyramids.
Right. Well, he thought it was going to be some sort of government, like plum government deal that he got because he earned it and whatnot. And of course, we did see in this episode that it wasn't always the girls he got with that he turned gay. We see him basically turn someone because he's so obsessed with the game.
That's
how it
yeah.
happens, I guess.
Yeah.
It's basically you go on a date with somebody and you just completely ignore them.
Yeah. And then later, there are all these geishas basically that are all over him, and he keeps asking for porn, and they're like, "Well, we're right here," and he's like, "No, I want porn, and get me one with Asians. I like Asians," and it's like, it's like, dude, no, you're. But anyway. Yeah, this kind of thing is lost on idiots. But we also have the thing he gets where Dante gets the gig with the junior little league because he and Leonardo end up bonding at the reunion, which is kind of interesting.
Which is a reunion because they're class of 80, he's class of 70,
right?
And I think there's supposed to be a class of 90 as well.
I think so, yeah. So it's kind of interesting that they were doing all these.
Oh no, they were class of 80 or class of 90 because they said class of 80 had a disaster of some sort.
Right. A bunch of them died on a rocket ship.
Yeah.
And the one who recruits Randall is Professor Ram, and he's played by Michael McKean, who's always a lot of fun, and he did a good job with the role, I think. Yeah.
Very much as they point out, the Bad News Bears.
I really liked it. Yes, it was still dated in its commentary and a lot of the portrayals, but it was still funny as they did. And they had Jay, who had, because Jay never actually got out of elementary school, apparently.
Yeah.
By the way, he
got held back a whole lot.
This is actually pre No Child Left Behind, so it made sense to those of us who were pre that. And so he was able to play in the Little League. So
yeah, what was it? The fourth grade, I guess, was what.
Yes, he was stuck in the fourth grade, but he was in his 20s.
I just saw a similar thing. Just the other night, we watched a Great North episode where Aunt Dirt was technically still a student because she never graduated, and
it's like, the plot of Billy Madison. Right. The entire film about Billy Madison is that.
No, in all fairness, this was the episode where Dante actually, for the most part, got to have what he wanted. And Randall got shit on, but then at the end it turned around again where Dante gets his head cut off in the photo. It's Randall photobombing it.
I will admit, though, at the end where they ended up mashing up Temple of Doom and Bad News Bears into one, that part felt a little icky.
No, the part where they're at the end and they decide he forces them to play the game.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I mean.
But it's also, I don't know why I laugh at that. That is like messed up humor.
It's messed up, but yeah. Sadly, it tracks with these characters, though.
It's like, well,
Randall more than
do to help you play ball.
It makes much more sense for Randall than for Dante, but it's still, yeah.
I mean, one joke that they got by the censors was when Jay actually asked for a can of whipped cream, which was a code for whippets, which of course the censors didn't get.
Of course not. Because the censors tended to be about a 60-year-old, couple of people sitting in a room, be like, "Oh, was this what the kids are making fun of these days?" That's literally what the censors people would be. It'd be some older group that have the disdain, and they'd make the decisions. And that was the case in not just film, but in a lot of print also at the time. Because until Mad Magazine really became more of a thing, it was unheard of having sort of these dirty jokes in print, even though they slipped by.
Well, I mean, National Lampoon's magazine also in a lot of ways.
Well, National Lampoon sort of started it. There's a good film about the creation of National Lampoons.
Right.
Good documentary.
Yeah.
But this was. But again, actually, if anybody owns this DVD set, the commentary is worth listening to because they really joke around, and it is actually quite funny to listen to. Some of the stories, like the story about this one lawyer that Kevin Smith hates, and later on they run into him in a bar, and his wife it's like, "Why don't you say anything, you pussy?" He's like, "Well, I was scared to." But it is funny to listen to him actually do the commentary on it. But
Right.
Anybody else on the Bad News Bears Temple of Doom mashup episode?
The
okay.
Temple of Doom part was okay.
Temple of Doom, I am in the minority because Temple of Doom is actually my favorite Indiana Jones movie.
I enjoy Temple of Doom. I'm also an enjoyer of Temple of Doom, but when it comes to the 3, and I'm only going to count the 3, I'm not going to count the 2 that were made afterwards. It's the weaker of the 3.
I think so too.
But it doesn't do the Ouroboros eats into itself concept that Ark does.
It did have the minecart thing. That was one of the few iconic things that did stick with the rest.
I still want a roller coaster based off of Indiana Jones Temple of Doom minecart.
Yeah.
Yeah, Disney just did that Jeep thing, unfortunately.
I do have to admit, though, one thing that we will never be able, unfortunately, to get away from with Temple is Kate Capshaw's character is one of the most annoying characters in movie history.
Hey, she got the role for sleeping with the director.
Well, yeah, but oh my God, she was annoying.
And for those who don't know, Kate Capshaw is Steven Spielberg's wife.
Right. Now, I was intrigued that they did not attempt to do a version of the Kali Ma chant in this one. They didn't even do a chant, really. Maybe that was legal reasons for that. It probably was. But...
Yeah, well, legal. I can imagine legal reasons are also you're going into a very disturbing scene in Indiana Jones that
Right.
I'm kind of surprised would still get aired at the time on television. Because it's, guy literally putting his arm into somebody's chest and ripping out his heart.
Right.
But hey, it's very memorable.
It is.
Oh yeah.
I think the
This is in a series where every single episode of every single movie has something very disturbing. You have the whole Ark of the Covenant melting faces in the first one. You got the heart thing in the second one.
We also have the eating chilled monkey brains.
Yes.
Yeah, I never liked that.
Which that didn't hold up very well either. But then of course then you have the aging thing with the Grail in the third one. So
Mm-hmm. But that's that was peak cinema in my opinion.
Right.
So it's you got the differences in all 3, but it's kind of interesting to see how it goes and lands. And that was an interesting episode. My favorite episode is actually the last episode, which we'll go ahead and move into so we can get her
Just
done.
called the last episode ever. Apparently titled before they knew it would be.
Let's see here. There we go. Episode summary. Which is the full episode name is The Last Episode Ever, which is the funniest thing because it is the shortest episode title.
Right.
Which, of course, again, didn't air until Comedy Central aired it in 2002. Essentially, they answer it like all these people they imagine, at Comic-Con, them talking and the fans saying this. And apparently, Kevin Smith had said in the commentary that one of the fan comments was actually almost identical to what they have in this. Like, we predicted that comment before it happened. So they decide to try and make it as much like the original Clerks film as they could, with a slight spin on it, like which would have happened like with the cartoon. So they introduced basically it's an entire episode, one of those episodes of everything crazy is going on outside, but we're in here this whole time.
Right.
Episode type.
And there is the running joke throughout the episode of one of the characters from the original movie of Caitlin Bree. And eventually Lisa Spoonhour does reprise her role of Bree, but it's like, what, 1 or 2 lines and it's off screen. But she is a running joke throughout.
And there's the Matrix joke that Brittany was talking about. Gets its debut there, which
they do, like I said, with the climbing joke. They just run it in the ground because they're not doing it by rules of 3.
Which Kevin Michael Richardson does do a serviceable Morpheus impression. Yeah.
It does get entertaining when he's like just trying to get him to. It's like, I want to tell you about the Matrix, or trying to like. And Dante's like, no, screw you. After that first one where they actually take him out of the Matrix and drop him into the quick stop.
Right. And then, of course, Jay and Silent Bob are basically acting as the continued peanut gallery, essentially, the whole letting them know what's going on.
Well, they also model it after an old Looney Tunes episode. Matter of fact, our actual background picture is from this, with the whole concept. And they wanted to make it the concept of actually Jay and Silent Bob were actually animating the show the whole time. Which,
the old Daffy Duck joke, or episode. They did repeat it with Bugs Bunny, but it was the classic Daffy Duck film short that had the animator screwing around with Daffy Duck, that it turned out to be Bugs.
Yeah.
And that's a cool reference. They also referenced Todd Browning's Freaks, though Kevin Smith admitted he had never actually seen the movie before. He just was familiar with but everybody knows the one of us thing.
Right.
But I am actually one of the few who have seen Todd Browning's Freaks. And I do feel like it's a piece of cinema that people should see just because it was banned so badly. If anything, just to thumb the noses at the people who banned it. But other thoughts about it? I mean, and one joke I really loved about it was the whole thing about them deciding to face off with the with the soccer team. And because Randall made fun of soccer, and they pan up to the roof as if they're going to, go up there like in the original movie, and they end up tearing apart the store to play in there because they can't leave the store.
Well, and I almost feel like Randall had a Beavis and Butthead moment where he did have a moment, almost romantic moment, except he got more involved in a video game, which he evidently beat his final score. And I think the whole thing was playing into the pyramid scheme of things. So
that was last episode. This one was the running gag of they kept trying to go out to the fair, and Dante had this girl he was trying to go and apologize to, and she just started sleeping around with everybody around.
Right.
Which plays off of the original movie. If you've seen the original movie, a lot of the jokes are ones that they continue from that.
Yeah,
Right.
Dante's girlfriend slept around with everybody.
Yeah.
She wasn't she the one that ended up flaying the dude in the restroom and got carted off afterwards? Yeah.
The dude that had the heart attack and died on the toilet. Yes.
Yeah.
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 And I think was it the same actress?
The
It
wild.
was the same actress, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love how Randall was like when the older mother and came in with the two kids, and she was like all like, I'm so glad this place was open because the wild gorillas have gotten out, and he's like, ma'am, are you gonna buy anything? No, I forgot my purse. He's like, well, then you need to like leave because
Get out of there. Will just kicks them out like with prejudice. I mean,
like,
Jan Silent Bob come in there with a bunch of severed arms.
Whatsoever.
Yeah.
No feeling whatsoever for her, and you hear her screaming in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But and for some reason, I did get a kick out of how every single time that Dante tried to go out, somebody busted in the door and stopped him. And Jay and Silent Bob were just hammering in the nail that his girlfriend was sleeping around with everyone. So,
and that is a gag that works in this context. But for anyone who works in customer service, there's a feeling of reality too, because there is never anything more guaranteed to bring a customer in than if you're trying to do something.
Well, especially if you're trying to leave.
Exactly. If you're trying to get away from the desk, that's when you need to be at the desk. Or the register, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was kind of fun. I felt for him. I did.
That was the thing with the original Clerks. You felt sorry for Dante because he had to deal with all these, total assholes around him, get in the way of his job, and it wasn't his day to go to work.
Right.
And it was that whole concept of, we all have that day, in our jobs where we're not supposed to be working, but we're coming in anyways because we have to. And it's just a repetitive thing. And I can tell you, that's what made that movie resonate with people when they saw it. And I still to this day, have those moments. It's like, I'm at this job. Why am I at this job right now?
I think that they did, as far as an episode goes of the show, I think this is probably one of the best efforts to mimic the movie, the feel of the movie, and mix it with the kind of oddball nature of the series. I feel like this is the most hybridized episode.
Yeah.
And I did love the ending. I actually to tell you the truth, this is probably my favorite episode. But I did like how they referenced the Looney Tunes episode, which I always thought was hilarious back in the day, with Daffy and the messing. They even did the thing with Randall where they drew him like that. And I think it was a fitting last episode of the series. It's a sad one, but it is fitting last episode of the series. And I think that the quality here, I think if it had continued on that level, it might have. I felt like they were just finally getting there,
Here's the question for you. If this show was done today and done for somebody like Netflix or Hulu, so it doesn't have to meet the standards of airing on television, would it work?
I don't know. Because I feel like what magic Kevin Smith had in that is kind of evaporated. I feel like
I'm kind of mixed bag. I do feel they need to get better writers on it if they were to do something like that. And I have no doubt Kevin Smith how often as he digs back into the Clerks, kind of drags that in the mud and almost to a point in some sense, in my opinion, with the franchise. I do feel it wouldn't be possible today unless they had better joke tellers.
I think that if this series had been done on something like UPN, where they were given them more creative freedom, people might not have heard. Actually, I disagree that people wouldn't have heard about it. I think it would have taken off there, because if they were given more creative freedom, I do think that the series would have been more successful and probably would have been better known.
Potentially.
Well, I mean,
Again,
this aired on another series on ABC that had somewhat success and had a big name also behind it, and that was the PJs, which
Right.
was Eddie Murphy's animated series. And that did go over to UPN after, a bad run on ABC, and has more seasons.
That one's another one that probably doesn't work as well today, but
No, that wouldn't work as much today.
But still,
I didn't realize Lisa Spoonhour died in 2017. Yeah. So this is. And
but
what's that?
I was gonna say, but that is. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Jake.
No, never mind.
But that was Clerks, the animated series. Any other thoughts on the plot or episodes or things you wanted to come back and comment on, stuff that we ran over before we move on to the guts of it?
Not that I know of.
All right.
I think we got it.
Well, then let's just get into production design. Now, I know that the original concept was to make it look more comic booky, which is what they decided to do with the style. But I know that the style is very divisive on up and down because of the simplistic nature.
Well, there was a I don't know if it was a Clerks, but I know there was a Jay and Silent Bob comic series for a little bit. So, and I don't know if it was reminiscent of the comic series, but I do remember seeing the books back in the 90s. But it could have been that concept.
Well, I mean, Drawn Together came out not long after this thing finished. I mean, a few years after, 2004.
Yeah, but that was on Comedy Central, where they could get away with more.
And they could have actually, that's another one I think Clerks could have been successful on.
Well, it was successful on it. I mean, after this, it went to Comedy Central.
A few years later, yeah.
But and the thing is it aired the completion, and there was no interest really to continue it. It didn't get the treatment that Family Guy or Futurama got, where they came back from cancellation. Very few shows do. It's just a rarity that you have those. But I mean, we'd like to think back. It's like, oh, well, could, putting this on another network succeed? Or like I said earlier, would putting it on streaming succeed if they had done it that way? It's a mixed bag. It really is. And I think the only reason why Family Guy and Futurama succeeded from cancellation was they had enough charm and enough episodes for people to want more.
Well, Futurama got a bad bag for the beginning because they aired it right after the football games. So most of the episodes would be freaking cut off when
I mean,
or not aired at all.
Anything in Fox's Sunday night lineup that aired in 8 p.m. slot was a Doom slot.
Yeah,
right. I mean, that was where Family Guy got its start, wasn't it?
Yeah,
yeah. That first season was quite short. They're lucky it got picked up for a second season.
That made me also hate Monday Night Football even more because I kept missing parts of Futurama because they would cut the darn thing off because they would go into overtime with the football games.
Right.
So
yeah. You never know which shows will make it and which ones won't.
Well, I mean, it's a lot of outlining factors, but in the case of ABC, they did not have football, as I recall, at the time this aired. So ABC didn't really have that kind of threat. Plus, I believe this aired like on a Wednesday night, which was just like the middle of the week. No one, would people watch and tune in? It's like,
Again, I really feel like they decided that this was going to be dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, they could have used it to bookend TGIF or something like that. That would have been.
And I mean, TGIF was on its way out, I believe, at this point.
Okay.
So what are y'all's thoughts on the animation?
It's clean.
It takes getting used to, but once you do, you know.
It's from the staff of Kim Possible. I'm not gonna diss it. Character design and staff that would do Disney shows.
Mm-hmm.
They did decent stuff then. I mean, it's not bad.
Yeah.
It had that heavy. Actually, I do find it interesting that the black outline would get thicker or thinner depending on the episode sometimes.
That is primarily a matter of how quickly you need to draw something, and this is like the early days of digital animation, when people were trying to figure things out on how to do color and how to do quick animation. You weren't getting the South Park concept really going through on how to cut and edit animation so quickly that it could be done within, in the case of South Park, within 24 hours in one case. So
yeah. Anybody else on the animation of the show or the looks or? I did like that's actually one of the reasons why I thought that the court episode, the joke about the Korean animation, actually stuck well, because it was animated in South Korea, so it was kind of funny how it was, especially when they had the whole thing animators, and then they had the rap.
I do want to kind of be that fly in the room to see how the Korean animators were like, "What the hell are we working on? It's a joke about us? What?"
Actually, I think that many of them probably would have gotten that joke about the rat, like doing the slave farming.
I think
Pikachu joke, yeah.
I think they got Dante down pretty good as far as animation wise. Randall, they could have done a little better.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I love the designs for Jay and Silent Bob on this.
I agree with what you said earlier about Jay. Like, he does not really look like Jay, but it works for the show. It really does.
I see a lot of Jason Mewes in the cartoon version. I do.
Yeah.
Because that was the thing, and Kevin Smith had even made the comment, like, yeah, because they'd made the original designs of him looking much meaner looking. Yeah. But then they said, no, you need to make him much more innocent. And then when because they had the guy actually that did the original art on there, and he said, I didn't think about it. Then I met Jason Mewes for a while. I was like, oh, I get it now. And it makes sense.
Yeah.
And I have heard that people who have actually met Jason Mewes have been nothing but complimentary about him. It's like
you can see a few episodes if you go back and can see Comic Book Men, because I know it's on Hulu or some other streaming here and there. You can see episodes with Jason Mewes just coming into the comic book shop and just acting as he would be normally.
Right.
And he's just sitting there playing with action figures and being, silly, stupid. And you can see Jason, he's like, that is Jay. Jason Mewes is absolutely just Jay, but in a more controlled environment for the film.
Well, I did.
You should check out
when we did the Clerks discussion.
Live gaming streams.
When we did the Clerks discussion, I remember I did a lot of the commentaries and bonus features with that. And yeah, they talked about how he was very introverted and shy, and they almost had to force it out of him to get him to act. That it was, he definitely is outside of his comfort zone as the movie version of Jay. Yeah.
I'm almost tempted to try and utilize my October pick, since it's the first week in October, to do Clerks, because it's not quite into October, so I could maybe make the excuse so that everybody could refresh their memory on it for November when it comes out. But Yeah, it's interesting how the characters have gone, because Clerks 3 actually pulls a lot from the original filming of Clerks, and it's good to be able to see that film to understand it and where they come from it, and understand how Clerks 3 actually is a good endpoint of the Clerks series.
But it wasn't an endpoint.
Well, now they're doing a fourth one, yeah, but you know, but it was sort of like how I looked at Toy Story 3 as a great endpoint of the series.
I saw something today that confirmed that yes, they will indeed have Buzz and Woody in the fifth movie, and I'm like, how? The way they ended the fourth movie was perfect for them to go their separate ways. How?
They needed to end it the way that they needed to end it on the sad note on the third movie. They needed it all to burn into the incinerator. That would end the series.
I did also
childhood traumatic, like the rest of our childhood.
I did also see today that they've confirmed that Rick Moranis is coming out of retirement for Spaceballs.
For Spaceballs, yes. Just for Spaceballs.
Yes.
And the fact that you've got Mel Brooks reprising his role in acting,
and Bill Pullman will be back.
Bill Pullman and Mel Brooks are kind of amusing because it's Bill Pullman. He has nervous disease, doesn't he? Some sort of nervous disorder where he's having a difficulty doing acting, and then of course Mel Brooks is going to be 100 next year.
Yeah.
And 2027, when this supposedly comes out, jeez.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that he lives to make it, so that it is a. I know he's not directing it, but still.
I hope he lives long enough to watch it come in the theaters and audience find enjoyment. It shows the difference in comedy from when Mel Brooks started to when Mel Brooks is now.
Yeah.
How comedy has changed within Mel Brooks, because he hasn't really changed. His films haven't really changed. And I mean, on top of that, we're getting the new Naked Gun film, and that looks decent, being, Liam Neeson playing the role of Frank Drebin's son from the original series.
I wouldn't have thought it would work, but it does, because
it's working. It definitely is working, yes.
Like Leslie Nielsen was, the serious actor in a ways, and just play it for comedy. And
right.
I think, if there was ever a strategy. But, let's talk about music. You know what the funny thing is? I love the opening riff for this series. I love that. I love that. That is so good.
Yeah. I mean, there's not much music in here that's of note. It's just that riff, which is kind of repeated in the end song a little bit. But I mean, yeah, it's got a good staying power. If I was going to do, a TV show in the 90s to 2000s, for an adult show, that's the way you would enter him. And aside from Family Guy's, of course, entrance, which you have, them doing this whole song dance bit.
Right.
But that's Seth MacFarlane, and that's the way Seth MacFarlane writes. So,
yeah. Well, he's really big into musicals, and he has a good voice. So, yeah, of course, he plays that up with the themes.
And calling back to Naked Gun, he's the one helping us get the new Naked Gun.
Yeah.
So,
I was surfing the YouTube and found a moment where Seth MacFarlane actually sang the 110 clarinet set the hit parade from Music Man. So, yeah, he's definitely.
He loves his musicals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other comments on the music from Clerks?
No.
At first, when I was watching the first couple of episodes, I was reminded of the show The Critic a little bit.
Yeah.
I in fact think the Dustin Hoffman issue came from The Critic, because The Critic did do Dustin Hoffman.
Yeah.
Actually,
I will tell you something. If we continue on the animation anticlimax, I might have to bring forth The Critic, because it would be a good.
If we do another American show, that one's high on my list.
Yeah.
I need an excuse to watch my copy.
I don't mind.
Yeah.
I think The Critic is definitely underrated as a show. I think it still holds up today in a lot of ways.
And it's one of the few people realize it's a Matt Groening. It came from the creator of The Simpsons.
So, well, I guess with that, let's get into favorites. Favorite episode and favorite Kevin Smith project. And that can be anything: films, series, comics, whatever. Favorite Kevin Smith project. So, well, actually, let's start with you, Tammy. Favorite episode and favorite Kevin Smith project.
I don't know Kevin Smith's projects.
Do you remember Tusk?
Somewhat.
That was that body horror one where it turned.
Yeah, I know what it is.
Okay. Did you like him or like it?
I don't know. Kind of deranged.
Well, it's definitely memorable.
Yeah, you got Tusk, Red State, Yoga Hosers, all of his best work. No, I mean, you've got Zack and Mary Make a Porno,
That's an underrated film.
420 movie, which I haven't seen yet.
Oh, I need to see that one.
Dogma, Clerks, 1 through 3, Jay and Silent Bob,
Mallrats,
Chasing Amy,
Cop Out.
Up Out, Jersey Girl.
I think the only one I've ever even seen is Tusk.
Oh wow!
Well, I guess I would win
I'll
by
have
default.
I guess I'll have to update her on that.
Yeah,
Well,
because
you're gonna see a lot more before this is over.
Let's see. So we've covered on the channel Tusk, Mallrats, and Clerks, right? Is that all so far?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay.
I'll just say I might just have us cover Clerks again since there.
I guess my favorite episode was the courtroom one.
All right.
I have to agree with Tammy. That's my favorite episode too.
So, what's your favorite Kevin Smith project, Dave?
Oh God, that's in between Mallrats and Dogma. So I'll have to say it's kind of an equality of both.
How about you, Jake? What is your favorite episode and favorite Kevin Smith project?
My favorite episode is probably the courtroom episode. I don't know that that's a clear winner, but we'll go with that. Maybe give a shout out to the final episode, I guess, as a runner-up. Honestly, I'm not 100% sure what I would say is my very favorite Kevin Smith project. Probably, I know back in the day, it was Chasing Amy with a Bullet. I absolutely loved Chasing Amy. There were, I do think I need to see Dogma again. And I do think that Clerks has a staying power for me, partly because I've lived customer service enough that it just has that, feeling. And I it's not my favorite of his movies, but I honestly thought Red State was a very solidly done film. That's probably one of his better films in terms of just being on its own merit. But yeah, I would say tentatively Chasing Amy's still my favorite, but yeah, there are a few that are good contenders.
All right. Well, Brittany, favorite episode and favorite Kevin Smith project.
Favorite episode, courtroom episode. And I'm going to approach this by favorite subject based off of media type. So, favorite subject for Kevin Smith in total, that out of all of his campaigns, is going to have to be Clerks. which would be in his movie category. Famous Kevin Smith is a writer, of course. This is Daredevil run. It is pretty much what helped develop the Netflix Marvel Daredevil that we see today. Between the work of Frank Miller to Kevin Smith, that's what we kind of get. And then favorite show, I prefer Comic Book Men because it's just a nice, silly, and a very humorous series that you see Kevin constantly do jokes with the guys who just run this comic book shop, and you see all these fun things, and you see more of a human side to Kevin than the director that's acclaimed or all his status therein. That he's more of just a regular guy. I just want to talk about crap and comics books and stuff from nostalgia. And so I do find that I do put that over higher claim than this animated series.
I think Brandon mentioned earlier his commentary tracks. Like he comes across that way in commentaries too. He's very open and down to earth, and it's pretty cool to hear him
Definitely
talk.
one of the better commentators on a commentating track.
I need to read more of his comics. I think the only one that I can remember reading was I think I read some Green Arrow issues that he had done, and I thought that was pretty well done. But I don't think I read any of the Daredevil.
Daredevil's Guardian Devil. So any of the Guardian Devil story, it's an 8-episode issue.
Okay.
But it's accredited as one of the best Daredevil series in the franchise.
Okay.
And I think a lot of people, especially in our type of fandom, can get on the line with Kevin Smith because he's the kind of person, if we all grew up in the same area, would have been in our group of friends. I mean, there's no doubt.
He's a nerd. It's simple enough.
If we were born the same year and went to the same high school, we probably would have been the same group of friends as him, and probably would have been in his movies too, or referenced anyway. Because that's just that thing, and that's why I think a lot of us would resonate, because he's that person that we would have probably been friends with, and he's an interesting character. Oh, as far as my favorite episode, last episode, Mallrats is always been my favorite Kevin Smith film. I know that it's the one that most people crap on, but I just it just brings joy to me.
Come on, Stanley was a great character in that film.
I do think that and his run on Green Arrow is my favorite comic run. As far as things go, I actually think that his Masters of the Universe thing got shit on a little bit too early. I think people really just locked on the, oh my gosh, there's a girl power element to it. It's too woke. You can't watch it.
Yeah, but when you take He-Man and you just demasculinize the main character of the series,
it was rectified in the second half. And
most people didn't want to give it to the second half.
And the thing is, the whole thing was done with the purpose of the second half already being written in mind. He had planned it from the end.
Well, at the same time, Kevin Smith acknowledged or stated back on the days in Comic Book Men, he didn't understand He-Man. He never did. And it kind of showed.
I mean, sort of like how Scott Pilgrim actually did it better with the animated series.
Yeah.
I actually think that Scott Pilgrim improved with Scott Pilgrim being knocked out of the series, but
we got a new video game coming out too.
But matter of fact, unless you are a person who loves Scott Pilgrim as a character, so Dane, if you really want to watch, no. But Scott Pilgrim the animated series was really good, and I loved the when they did put Scott in there, the whole tribute to Bubblegum Crisis, for instance, at the end. With that being said, I will hand this back to Dave, and that was Clerks.
Alrighty. So, hopefully you, ladies and gentlemen, have enjoyed our discussion on this series. Now I think we'll go around and, let us know down in the comments what you thought of said discussion. And if you've gone out and seen this animation, let us know your thoughts. But let us go around and tell the audience a little bit about ourselves and what we do. So, Tammy, if you wanted to tell them a little bit about yourself, what you do, who are you, and what do you do?
I go on this channel and another one with David, and check out different movies and get everybody's opinions and thoughts, and at times it can be quite interesting. And with it being summertime now, I've been enjoying taking my car out to the car shows.
Alrighty. And heading over to you, Jake. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do?
I'm Kotobuki Jake. I am the occasional co-host of the YouTube channel SeptumSin vs. the World, where I come on to help Brandon with pickup videos, and we also do our occasional animation discussions. Used to be anime anti-climax, now I guess it's animation anti-climax, where we've been on a Adventure Time kick for a couple of months now, and this month we'll be looking at the Galaxy 999 movies, so good times there. Some old school anime there. And then, of course, I honestly, between my job and all my irons I have in the fire, I don't have a lot of time for viewing, and I have been much more ambivalent about it lately than I was in the past. But I still do make time to watch stuff to join these folks each week for our discussions, and they can't all be winners, although this week was much less painful in some ways than last week's was, but I look forward to the next 2 weeks. Those are going to be good. It's just going to be hard finding time for next week's choice. Have to make time for it, but yeah, there we go. I do have, like I said, so many hours in the fire. I went on a extensive nature hike on Saturday, and then got my steps in later in the evening in a different sort of hike. And this coming weekend, I'm going to a concert for the first time in a while, so that'll be a nice change of pace. And not to mention, I guess I'll have to be doing some cat sitting as well. So there's always something going on. But
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Heading over to you, Brittany. Thanks for coming back on the show. You're more than welcome to come on anytime. But
Thank you.
why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
All right. I am Brittany Dotson, otherwise known across the web as the VTuber I Don't Know. Also, Embry Arts on the internet. I've been on there for quite a long time. I'm a cartoonist. I also do Topical Show on Tuesdays, which also features art, and a Let's Play right now that's been pretty much just dominated with Stardew Valley Let's Play. But people love it, so that's what we're playing. And yeah, you can catch me pretty much anywhere on socials as Embry Arts. I'm on most of them. I will interact with you given time. And I just do a lot of art-related issues, being an artist, being a cartoonist. So that's the joy.
Alrighty. Heading over to you, Brandon. And why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do?
Well, I'm SeptumSin of SeptumSin vs. the World. We love physical media. We have some fun doing things. I mean, tonight, Dave and I did a huge video game pickup, part 2. And we're done with that. We might have to get together again for another one. I might task a project actually with Dave and Jake together for next Monday if they are game, for maybe an online pickup type thing. But I'm also working on various projects myself. Like I say, I'm right now trying to cast a movie, which will be my third feature film. Heaven help me. But otherwise, and we are doing our travel vlogs. So every Thursday, there's a new one. It's from our trip to London and Paris, which it'll go back to movie reviews if y'all miss those after that is done. So if I get time Wednesday to actually finish editing, we'll see one on Thursday. If not, well, I guess it's just whatever. But we do have another pickup video on Wednesday with me and Jake, so we can have fun with that.
Alrighty. And my name is David Strege. I'm one of the founding fathers of Inside Movies Galore. So thank you for coming along with us on this fantabulous journey we've been having. Some of it has sucked. Some of it has been awesome. But but that's the name of the game, ladies and gentlemen. And when you're going on and talking about some of these things, you're not always going to like exactly what you're watching before you. So, and I think it takes balls to actually say so, and then have reasons why. So it's definitely been interesting and entertaining, and hopefully you had fun along the way. We are definitely not done this month. We have a couple more birthday picks, more in store, and I do believe mine next choice is next, and that's why it's going to be a problem for some people because it's got 4 episodes. It was a mini series, and it was, if I had to say anything, it is my favorite miniseries of Stephen King. I believe
it's actually kind of funny. I did a 6-episode series, but it's not even half the length.
Right.
I know, right? And it's The Stand. So, it is definitely going to be a haul, but it'll be worth it in the end. And hopefully it'll be a good and grand discussion by the time we
a serviceable adaptation of an excellent book.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if I don't get to it, I've seen it enough times I'll remember it.
Here too, because I almost know it by heart, but I know I will enjoy watching it this coming weekend. So, in any case, I do moonlight under a different channel called Delusions of Grandeur, where we also go on mostly every Sunday. This Sunday, I have to be at a meeting with Tammy, so we'll be going back on in 2 weeks, and we'll be covering To Kill a Mockingbird in a couple of Sundays. So that's going to be interesting. And I do some video pickups and some video reviews from time to time. So definitely check out the channel. It's although right now I've been doing a lot of gameplays of games that I've been playing. So if you want a good sit back and watch some classic gaming, feel free. Free. I have a blast going on and recording myself doing some stupid shit. So, but in any case, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you back next week here on the Inside Movies Galore. Everyone say good
night.
Good night, everyone.
And of course, after the credits roll, if the 3 of y'all that are here normally is down for just 1 minute, I have one thing to ask y'all.
Is it safe?
Is it safe?
Inside Movies Galore. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.